Hello, geeks, freaks, and all those unique. This is MC Frodis, and we're talking about episode 6 of WandaVision, all new Halloween Spooktacular, because better late than never. So when we last left off on WandaVision, Pietro had just turned up, and this was Evan Peters' Pietro. And as we get into this episode, we seem to have skipped over a decade, because last time we were very family ties, full house 80s, and we've gone straight into Malcolm in the Middle, which was 2000. So we did kind of skip over the 90s, which I guess that's because like the family comedies of the 90s were like You're Married with Children and Roseanne, and that might have been a little bit harder to fit with the WandaVision characters, and I think Malcolm in the Middle actually works really well for them. So we're doing like this breaking the fourth wall, narrating to the camera thing. The big thing is still Pietro, and honestly, like, I'm somebody who really loves Evan Peters as an actor. I love Evan Peters' Quicksilver, and I love the X-Men movies. So having him come in, I think works better than Aaron Taylor-Johnson would. I mean, first of all, bringing Aaron Taylor-Johnson back wouldn't have any real tension to it, because the whole thing is that he's not the Pietro that Wanda remembers, and it's just Evan Peters' version of Pietro has a lot more personality to him. They didn't really develop him at all in Age of Ultron. They didn't have any time. Meanwhile, Peter in the X-Men movies, I mean, first of all, they had more movies to develop him, and he was just given more to do. So I really think that his character is better. And I think it works very well, especially in this kind of, you know, ne'er-do-well uncle man-child kind of thing that they've established for him. I think that fits very well with the character that we know from the X-Men movies. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to who or what is going on with Pietro, and I mean, some of it I've gotten into already. Personally, I mean, I'm just gonna say, I think that he is Pietro. Or Peter. He is some version of Peter. I don't think he's Mephisto. I don't think he's Nightmare or any of the other suggestions. I don't think he's just a regular Westview resident that's been turned into Pietro. I think that he is absolutely Pietro, and we'll find out more about that in the upcoming episodes. And I don't think that anything that happened in this episode contradicts that. I mean, certainly he seems to be interested in what Wanda's doing, but that doesn't surprise me. Pietro would absolutely be interested in what Wanda's doing. Now, it seems to me like possibly people in the Maximoff family are immune to Wanda's powers. Billy and Tommy are obviously not affected by the spell. And, I mean, maybe it's because he's a Maximoff as well. Maybe anybody who got their powers from the Soul Stone is not as protected, or is not as susceptible to Wanda's powers. I mean, that would even apply with Vision, because of course his powers come from the Soul Stone as well, and he's not really as, you know, susceptible to the spell as everybody else. I also heard a theory, which I thought sounded really cool. It's not where they're going with it, but that Pietro's brain moves so fast that it basically outruns Wanda's spell. And I'm like, oh wow, that's some interesting thinking. That's not what they're doing, but I like what you're thinking. I think that Elizabeth Olsen and Evan Peters have some great chemistry together. I mean, I know I'm sorry I keep on comparing Evan Peters to Aaron Taylor-Johnson, but I mean, they set it up so that's going to be something that we look at, the differences between these two characters. And I think that Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor-Johnson seemed very close to one another. I mean, obviously they're siblings, but they were kind of all they had in the world, so they relied on each other. Meanwhile, Wanda and Peter are very different, because, I mean, they were raised in different circumstances, and it just kind of increases the disconcertedness. So, so yeah, the fact that there's a lot of friction there, I think it works very well. I think it's very interesting. And I hope that Evan Peters' version of Quicksilver stays around, because I would like to see this guy turn up in, like, Doctor Strange. Because we have only a couple of episodes left of this show, and I don't think I'm going to have enough of that dynamic. I'm going to want more of it. And I think that he would also work very well with some of the other people that we know in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, very much want to keep him around. So, we do have this whole story with Wanda and Pietro. And then you've got, on the other side, you have Vision trying to figure out what's going on. And, oh, things get really creepy. I mean, like, I've been saying that for weeks. Just how creepy everything is. But as he moves closer and closer to the barrier, seeing that Wanda's really only controlling people towards the middle, where, like, she is, and where, you know, kind of, you know, the story is set. But everybody on the outside of town are just kind of like these zombies that are just going through the motions of doing things. And you see the one woman who is, like, hanging up decorations, and she's just, like, continually going through the motions of hanging it up, but she's crying. And that was just so freaky. And this show is, I think, consistently delivered some of the freakiest moments in the MCU. And it's kind of incredible. This episode in particular has a lot of really creepy moments, even though it's very much like a PG-13 type thing. But in this, we had the zombie woman who was crying. There was the image of Pietro with all of the bullet holes in him and dead, which was, you know, so weird, because of course it's not the same Quicksilver, but he looks like Quicksilver, and oh, it just, and the biggest one was the commercial, which we've been used to having, like, a single commercial throughout every episode, and all of them describe something from, like, Wanda's history. So we had, like, the Stark toaster, we had Hydra soak, we had the Strucker watch, and this week was the most disturbing one, and also I think the one that there's been the most interpretation on. So this was, I mean, as much as, you know, I, you know, was critical about the fact that they skipped the 90s. This commercial was very 90s, because I remember seeing them. This was, you know, your stop motion claymation type thing, and very, you know, extreme. So it's for yogurt, Yo Magic. The commercial really reminded me, so we have this extreme shark who shows up and gives a starving kid a, you know, cup of yogurt, but the kid's trying to open it up and he can't. And he basically wastes away. It reminded me of this YouTube series, Local 58, which had some, like, very, like, you know, kiddie cartoons, but with some very disturbing stuff in it. And that was just kind of the vibe that I got from this. And, I mean, just totally freaky. I just, ugh. As for, like, what I think the meaning of it is, I think that it is Yo Magic is talking about Wanda's magic. And, as for, I think the kids starving, not being able to access Wanda's magic, I think that's, you know, basically that what Wanda's doing is unsustainable, that Vision, Pietro, the twins, and everybody else can't survive off of just Wanda's magic, that it is kind of going to fold in on itself. Like, we have seen that it's been going on for several episodes, which go over the decades. But if you actually look on the outside, I think it's only been going on for a couple of days. And I think that if it continues on, that people are going to start to die because they're just not being sustained properly. And Wanda, as much as she can do things, she can't do everything. As she can't keep these people alive if they're not taking care of themselves. Vision is, he's figured things out basically at this point, and he pushes himself through the barrier because he knows there's something on the other side. And I think that's something that, Wanda kind of underestimated, that Vision's a hero. And I mean, like, Vision is one of 3 people we know that can pick up Thor's hammer. He is absolutely worthy. He is such a good person, without being an actual person, that he would not put up with this illusion. He would find a way to get through it. And when he does push through the barrier, his only thought is helping all of the people in the town because he knows how miserable they are. And I actually think that Vision would stay with Wanda. I mean, well, first of all, I think Vision loves Wanda. But I think that if Wanda were to let everybody go, he would very willingly stay with her. And it wouldn't surprise me if he even gives her that choice. It's like, trade them for me. But as he's, pushing through the barrier, we find out that Vision can't survive outside of the barrier. So Wanda's gonna amp things up and push the barrier outwards to keep Vision, safe and also trapped at the same time. And while all of this is going on, we do have storyline going on the outside. Monica is showing some sign of power, and I look very forward to finding out more about, I'm gonna guess they're gonna call her Spectrum. Monica has a lot of names, so, I mean, things to choose from. I don't know if they'll, super get into her actually having her powers in this. I'm gonna bet they're gonna hold on to the rest of that until Captain Marvel 2, which will be interesting. Jimmy, totally kicking butt. I would seriously watch a spinoff with Jimmy and Darcy and Monica. I think that would be really good. And a friend of mine did point out that'd be very much like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I think that things have changed since the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. days. That I think that, I mean, especially just by the restructuring in the studio, I think that if they were to do something with Jimmy and Darcy and Monica, they could make a storyline that actually did kind of incorporate the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I think was the big flaw with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., was the fact that it was kind of outside of everything. But I digress. I wasn't super crazy about Darcy hacking into the SWORD database. I mean, I get why they do stuff like that so that information can come out, but then we were given no indication that Darcy was able to do any of that. And just because somebody has become a doctor doesn't mean that they're able to become a hacker. An astrophysicist is completely different than anybody who has anything to do with computers. But whatever, we needed some way to get this information out. It does seem like SWORD has been doing something with Vision, which isn't really surprising because they had his body for 5 years. I look forward to finding out more about that and finding out who Monica's guy is. I can't believe they can't tease that Monica has somebody working on the outside on something for her without it being a reveal. I mean, it could be somebody we've already established in the MCU, but I think it probably is more likely somebody else. And I'm probably on the Reed Richards side of things, that, yeah, it might be their introduction to Reed Richards. But yeah, everything is kind of at this point, we're getting towards the wrap up. I think this was the end of Act 2, and we're getting into Act 3. I've heard a rumor that the last 3 episodes are going to be an hour long apiece, and I'm very much looking forward to that, because when I got to this episode and it was only like 37 minutes, I'm like, oh man, yeah, it's a bit shorter again, but if the next ones are like an hour, then I'll be happy. I think, considering where things left off last week, it was a bit calmer than I thought it would be. But I also don't think that you could have sustained the amount of energy that I had following the last episode with this one. This one was great. I loved what they did with Pietro, and I'm really looking forward to what's going to be coming. So comment down below with your thoughts on all new Halloween Spooktacular. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I do lots of videos on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Wars, Star Trek, Supernatural, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and other geeky pop culture things. I will be coming out with some new videos coming soon. I'm working on some very interesting scripts right now, which just got to get the executive function under control. But if you like what I do, please support me over on Patreon, where you can get early access to videos, as well as participate in polls and some other exclusive stuff. Or you could also buy me a coffee. If you'd like something to wear, you can go to my TeePublic or Redbubble, where you can get some of my geeky graphic designs. Today I am wearing my fanfic trope shirt. So until next time, live long and may the force be with you.